Let's talk Venom. Venom: The Last Dance is the third in a trilogy of films from Sony Pictures. Wouldn't say it's the most successful franchise out there, despite its big name talent. Tom Hardy carrying the load of most of the movies. Sony and the Spum Universe, Spider-Man Extended Universe from the Weekly Planet guys, they came up with that acronym. I would say this is mostly a success in the sense of box office. Critically, not so much, but I think with the Venom films that you don't get with the other Spider-Man extended Sony Pictures universe of movies is that you aren't caring about a character that much with Morbius or with Madam Web. Kraven the Hunter might be a little different because Kraven is a much more prominent character in comic book lore. But also Venom itself is a very well-known character that even casual audiences may know of. From Spider-Man 3 to the comics, there is lots of Venom lore out there to discover. So I think it is easier to digest a movie such as Venom rather than the other aforementioned movies, because you know what you're getting into, you know what it is, and I think sometimes it hits, sometimes it's a massive miss. I would say this third movie might be the worst of the three, which isn't saying much on a technical level, as the first two aren't exactly beautifully made films either, but they are at least fun. They are enjoyable to watch at times. Sometimes, though, the script really holds them back, and I think that is, again, the case with this third one. Let's get to what works with this movie. The use of the symbiote is much more creative than I feel like I saw in the last two. They had some fun additions to work around the symbiote. You would see in the trailers that he has a horse that he becomes. That's a pretty fun part, and there's much more mixes of animals that he gets into, and that is definitely the best part of the movie, because I think what does well for this franchise is the design of the symbiote. I like the slickness of it. It's very wet and, yes, again, slick, and it's not as manufactured as the Spider-Man 3 Venom, which just looks awkward. Even though I am a lover of that movie and I think it's underrated, I just don't think the look of Venom in that movie is very fun in general. Tom Hardy is the beating heart of this franchise. It's pretty obvious that his charisma is a major point of the box office numbers. I would say, even though it's awkward, the accent is off, it's strange. That's also what it's got going for it. It's strange, it's odd, it's something to watch, it's something to look at in awe and see, something that you may not like in a technical voice acting standpoint, but it's a fun time to watch, even if it's not Oscar-worthy content. There are a lot of other actors in this movie that could have made this better, but with the script, they just kind of had a dull role. I think Chiwetel Ejiofor was wasted, as he has been in the past in these movies. Juno Temple is a great actress that had a very odd backstory that they tried to shoe in, that was not really explained and not layered, so it just came off as forced. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Rhys Ifans was probably the worst used character in the movie. Him and his family. They were a family of alien fanatics that were trying to find and see an alien for the first time, since in this universe, for some reason, they just decided Area 51 is now being decommissioned. There's no real explanation behind it, and they use this family as maybe a sort of point of view characters to see from an outsider perspective of what it would be like to see these symbiotes in action, but it comes off strange. And that's the major point of what doesn't work with this movie, is the shooed in characters from the doctors and the family, and even Chiwetel Ejiofor's character just not comfortably moving around this universe with ease, and just very awkward. And this, you could tell that Sony had their dirty little hands all over this again. Another huge problem with this movie is its antagonist. I don't even know if you could call it a real antagonist, because most of it is just the thugs that the antagonist throws at Venom, and we see tiny little bits of who he is. The antagonist is Null, the lord of the Venom world that is trying to come back out, but we see tiny glimpses of him and never see much movement in his body or his face. It's very odd and just seems very cheap. I don't think it was the best use of him, and if this is the last dance but it's just not, then why call it that? I don't know. It seems odd. It seems like a thing to just drive up ticket sales. And the thug that he sends out to Earth is just this bug type monster thing that is just inconceivable to even describe, because it's just a mess. It looks weird, it looks cheap, and it has no specific things about it that make it interesting, except maybe the fact that when it eats someone, it turns into like a wood chipper in the back of its head and the blood comes out of the back, but it's not very enticing to watch. And that really is just how this franchise works. It seems slapped together last minute, cheaply made, even with a higher budget of $100 million. You can do lots of good things with that type of money, but Sony does not want to give its creatives full opportunity to tell their own story. They love to dip their hands into every little crevice of this, and that is essentially the whole issue. Is Sony doesn't want to be creative. They don't want to add voices that want to make something more interesting and more depth to it. They just want to make quick cash, and they have been with Venom, but I don't know about it this time around. I'm not sure about Craven. I think it's just an odd universe of bad guys being good guys, and I don't think it works well. It's not what it was meant to be. These characters aren't what they are made to be. They are, except for Venom, and that's really why this hasn't panned out as well as they had hoped. Venom is the only anti-hero that really has been part of the comic universe. The others are just low C, D tier comic book villains. Morbius is a nothing character. Madam Web, and I wouldn't say the same for Kraven, but essentially taking away what makes Kraven so Kraven and making him out to be some hero of the animals and all that is strange and off-putting to people who know who he is. And the reason why he's a loved character is because of how messed up he is, and to make him something he's not is what Sony does. But again, this franchise specifically is not always a miss for me. I do like Venom's character arc, and I like Tom Hardy in the role. So overall, this movie I would give a C. I don't know how you would compare that to Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't have it up very high up. It's like a 37% right now. I think that's fair. I don't see much life in this movie except for one or two little things that are fun. Otherwise, it's just a scrap together mess of a script and we'll do it in post type movie that just doesn't pan out. But that's just my opinion. What do you think of Venom: The Last Dance? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.